Hey there ninjas, there was a lot of interest in my Crank It Up build, so I figured I'd break it down for you, show you what you got. First thing I'm going to do is show you all the individual parts, how it goes together. Then we'll talk about operations, some of the weak points, and some of the areas that you got to address as you go through it. So stage one, this is one of the key things. This is your arm. It has the ratcheting mechanism built into it. It's got a long length to it. Mine is steel. It's got a center core of 7/8 of an inch and then a 3/16 inch wall, which ends up giving me 1.25 inch outside diameter. It's bent somewhere at around a 5-inch radius. That was the smallest they could do at Metal Supermarket where I ordered these components. We'll talk more about that in a couple of minutes. This is the receiver. This is a simple metal plate that allows me to bolt it to the brackets that it's got on it. Inside there is the receiver for the ratchet head. That is an actual socket. It's been welded into a piece of pipe that has also been welded onto the plate. Next is the guide plate. This is what restricts how far the arms go, what it sort of supports the arms have in different places. In an ideal world, I would have replaced this with aluminum, but we'll talk more about that later. Got lots of T-nuts on the back, gives me a lot of flexibility. And then over here, this is a right and a left, or a top and a bottom, a front and a back. These are two different receivers. These are what the arms lock into in both the beginning and end position. And you'll notice there is an opposite bolt pattern to them, which means that there is a left or a right, or a top or a bottom, but it kind of just depends on whether the mechanism is mounted on your right facing or your left facing, or how it kind of which goes. So 12 of those for a set of 3, because you need 2 per bracket. Anyway, or actually 6 and 6. 6 and so 12 total. So it kind of goes together like this. The receiving hitch bolts onto the back side of my plywood frame. It simply goes in, and I got some quarter 20 bolts, no, these are 5/16, 16-inch bolts going through there. Obviously, washer nut.
Four of those to hold this together.
So that's kind of the support bracket and the receiving bracket. They go together so that this can be bolted straight onto a mounting beam. And then our arm right here can go immediately into the receiver. And this is where we talk about these control bars and where they go. If I were to put this against here and line it up, you'll see how my holes line up right here. That's a great position for a 90-degree bottom stop. If I want my athletes to work from a higher position, I could simply pull this around up here, bolt it in up at that stage, and that gets that to fall right in there and match it exactly onto the holes, exactly. And then up at the top, this has to face the other direction, so that is your final answer if this is finishing a little past 90. So they go on, again, right into the T-nuts. So there is the entire package. You can see how that falls into that receiver and how the bar is supported when it's down in that receiver. Let's go ahead and mount it up. I'll show you some of the things you got to worry about, and a couple of other things that go on up top here. Alright, so I went ahead and I mounted it onto this temporary beam. It's just something out here so that I can show you what I got going on. Pretty happy with the right angle grip there. That gives me an opportunity to bolt down, and by bolting through the face of my support plate, I can kind of bolt it into the beam there. Still wasn't enough. Remember, when people are on top of this thing, there's a lot of this kind of motion on. I added another 2x6. I'm not going to do that on the mock-up. You'll just have to take my word for it. But the overall operation is super smooth. Ratchet handle forward, up, 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 over. When you land, go down. Reset is super smooth too. Flip the handle back, put it in position, flip it forward. Now all of these bolts have been somewhat tightened, But what I wanted to show you was kind of the flexibility of these things. If I loosen this up and move this over a little bit, now my athletes only have to go up till it's dead tall, straight up in the air. So that's why these are set up that way. I highly recommend that you have them. I really like the idea of a catch for the bar. In the show, they just had studs, and when these came out, they butted up against it, but that provided no longitudinal direction there. There is enough slop in play that I really prefer having something that you lock into before you leave the bar, and more importantly, when they jump onto it, this will take 90% of their landing load before this will, or at least really they help each other. They make it a lot stronger. Big weak points in the whole system. Obviously, right here, this is just 3/16 steel that I bent on my bending machine. I did not provide any kind of welded flange in there, and believe it or not, a lot of pressure and a lot of weight caused these to open up. Specifically, right here is no longer 90 degrees. These have bent around so that these don't nest near as easily. I'm just simply going to go ahead and weld in a little piece of steel, kind of add that extra support. I don't know if I'll add one on the back or not, but I am also going to go through and round off all of these corners. That is a pinch point. When you are resetting this at any time, if when it's coming down, you get your finger in there or you're holding it at just the wrong angle, it will pinch in there. Watch that during the reset. I'm also not a huge fan of, during the reset, just dropping them. That's a lot of bang for your buck. That's also going to bend and distort that. Definitely a fan of the circle, being able to change your parameters, whether you want the athlete to work for 90 degrees, if this was mounted up a little bit higher. Okay, so you could start there if you wanted to, only do that much of an arc on it. I do want you to notice something super important though, specifically how much rise occurs on each one of these handles. And if you watch the show, it was a really drop. It was a big drop when you would shave from one handle to the next, and it was the same in mine. I really could not do a whole lot other than that, but you got to remember, depending upon how long your arms are, you are doubling the amount of rise to the individual. There we are. All right, so take a look. You're going from my shins, imagine hanging underneath that, and then climbing all the way up. That's almost 4.5 feet of rise. And if you did that 3 times, you're 12, 16 feet up in the air. That's tough. So watch out for that kind of stuff. There is a little bit of twisting action here between these 2 points. I ended up not only providing 2 set screws, but an actual roll pin through the shaft of the ratchet and the inside of the steel. It's all one component now. Biggest issue was right there, where the receiver and the ratchet actually match. That square connection has just enough slop in it. I drilled through the set hole, put in a set screw. That was not tight enough. I dropped one of these wrenches on my head. After playing up there, got 9 stitches. I subsequently went back, provided a divot that the bolt goes down into, and I made a bigger hex head cap screw so that you can bolt down from the top of the bigger Allen screw. I went with a 3, and so anyway, I got it nice and tight, and that was awesome and wonderful. You can't take them out. Right now, I broke every one of my bolts. I've got to drill them out and retap them to try to get the handles and armatures off, simply because when you are squeezing a square thing, the square drive, from one side against the other, you have stopped one direction, but it can still wiggle the other way. And so the end of my bolts all got messed up. Threads wouldn't back out. They snapped off. I've got to drill them out just to get the armature off. I like the idea of being able to remove the armature because of that big steel thing sticking out in my gym. Like I said, I'm going to smooth off in radius and gentle up these and stiffen up those. This I'm very happy with. I'm probably going to add another pin across there and go with something different than a stainless steel set screw. I might grind the end of it so that it actually has some pressure, and if I provide a second one, then this square will have nowhere to move. In a perfect world, I would actually put the set screw on a corner so that it was pressing into that wedge with one single screw. I might end up doing that, I don't know. But that's my build, that's what I've learned. I hope you guys are out there thinking smart, being safe. One thing that I did add, and I think you might want to consider, what I like to call the fall arrest cable. Okay, I'm happy and comfortable with how this mounted. I put a bunch of screws through there, had a couple of bolts down there, had that 2x6, and I screwed it up on the top. But having this armature possibly fall on somebody, because I have all these holes, it was easy enough for me to just throw a string over here, throw a quick bowline in it, make sure it's not going anywhere, and then tie this as well right to the head of the ratchet. Were this to come apart, were this to fall out, at least the ratchet would stay up in the air and not come down on anybody else's head. Like I said, it was a heck of a lot of fun. It's an expensive build, guys, I gotta tell you. As much as you can do at home, I do highly recommend a full circle and the adjustability of these as much as possible. I do recommend some sort of divot or way of keeping the bar from laterally going in and out. There is some definite play. That here is translated into a lot of leverage to pull that off. So make sure that you have support both bottom and top on there. It's a tremendous, fabulous, fun, challenging obstacle. Enjoy it. And the technique you want to use, notice he does fall into the cradle before
Nice.
Push it forward.
Nice.
Yeah, into the cradle before you move to the next one.
Nice.
Please note there are obstacles and things to run into on either side.